we've got to talk price. It came up at the end, went down like a cup of cold sick. 700 US dollars, 700 UK pounds, 800 euros, 120,000 yen. Vertical stand sold separately. Don't worry, I'm sorted. Assuming it's the same vertical stand as the one for the Slim, but I suspect it is because ecosystem. Let's take some supporter comments here. Tagon86, why do we see such a large price gap between EU and US this time? It's 799 euros here, which is exactly twice what I paid for my PS4 Pro back in the day. 399 euros. Mackie D says, the in brackets, frankly, mental price is obviously the immediate talking point, as that's a whole lot of money for a mid-gen bump. It's for the most enthusiastic of enthusiasts, the wealthy and very few others. But given the lack of price cuts this gen anyway, are we looking at big price hikes for the genuine next generation of consoles? Maybe not 800 quid, but certainly 600 plus seems on the cards. Mr. Burns, one of my role models in terms of management style, says, so I guess Sony looked at PlayStation 5 selling for 700 euros plus for over 2 years on eBay and figured they could make that official. I've been on record for expecting a high price. Mr. Burns has been on the record. But 799 euros without a disk drive wasn't even on my card. But is that just a market reality? I'm actually inclined to think they will find an audience for it, given the first 2 years of PlayStation 5. I think one of the sort of mitigating factors for that first 2 years is that we were essentially locked up in our own homes and needed things to do and were willing to pay extreme prices to do those things. So I'm not sure we can sort of look at that as a sort of indicator. I do think, however, that consumer electronics are going up in price generally.
They are.
Phones are, flagship phones are $1,000 upwards typically. They probably will find an audience for this. The question is whether they can actually justify it. What's the difference between a PS5 Pro and a PS5? There's going to be a bit of extra memory in there. I'd assume the cooling has to be better. And the key price is going to the key increase is obviously going to be the size of the chip. But all the evidence is pointing to an existing relatively cheap process node now. So, I have to admit I was expecting 599 with a haircut to the price of the base unit. Doesn't look as though that's happening. John, I'm going to go to you first on this one. It's kind of staggering, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we're in a weird age because I think there is this, you look at consoles, the history of consoles, and I think people generally expect them to kind of sit within a fairly narrow price window. We actually saw that creep up a bit during the HD era, before that things were typically 300 or less. And then obviously, there was the PS3 situation with 599, but that came down pretty quick.
Wow.
And then we had, right?
I was just thinking, actually, Kaz Hirai and the $599 debacle.
Oh, yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Blew the doors off that. Absolutely. But at the same time, like you said, like electronics in general are like becoming extremely expensive. Like think about when the iPhone was first around and people were balking at the price, but now it's like, oh, you want the Pro model with just like the lower storage, it's like $1,500, right? Flagship phones from other companies, same price range. People upgrade these things every year. GPU prices, look where they're at compared to where they used to be. Like the days of the 1080 are long gone, and even that, that was good enough for the time, but even that felt expensive, you could argue. But now, like GPU prices are like way higher. Like everything is much higher. And based on what Microsoft told us back when we saw the Series X and Series S reveal, it's like just the cost of things at this point. Like it all makes sense why the price is so high. It's just that in this space, it's traditionally stayed within sort of a price ceiling. And every time they've tried to push out of that ceiling, it's been met with negativity, right? It seems more shocking than in other product categories. And I think that's why the sticker shock is there. But I feel like the US price is just like borderline okay somehow. But man, when you look at that Euro price or the Japanese price, it's just like, when it's like, okay, if you want to get a PS5 Pro in Europe with the disc drive, you're looking at like 920 euros. So that's a lot, man. That is a lot. That is a huge jump. This is way, way, way beyond what we've seen in the console space. And I kind of wonder if this is kind of where we're heading in the future. Like, do you foresee $1,000 Xbox, for instance, next gen? Maybe there'll be other options. Maybe this is just where we're landing. And instead of, this is like the opposite of the Series S, Series X, where we now have the base, like sort of a baseline, but then an upper tier. I don't know. I don't know, man. We're just in a weird spot right now with prices.
I was just reading some more supporter questions on the Patreon. Paul Calamata says, I hear all these people out here saying the PS5 Pro is expensive at $700, but Chad Warden wipes his ass with $700. Are all these people broke, or is the PS5 Pro pushing the limits of what's acceptable for console pricing?
Wow.
It's pushing the limits for sure, and I'm going to be really interested to see. I mean, every time somebody predicts doom for a new piece of consumer electronics, they kind of forget that they're initially available in limited quantities and always sell out. So I'm fully aware at this point that I think that the PS5 Pro is going to sell out simply, because there'll be limited numbers at launch. Yeah. But it's certainly going to be a test, I think. And that's fascinating. It's not great though. I think that $600 would have been a lot more palatable. I think for $700, I'm disappointed at the quality of the presentation. I think they could have done a whole lot more with that. Man, that's kind of crazy. But we are seeing things like more expensive GPUs. I guess my question is, this kind of pricing, if it does move on to like PS6, it's surely not. But because, the whole point of a console is a cheap, subsidized mainstream box. I don't think there's any level of subsidy going into the PS5 Pro at this price point.
No.
If they're breaking even with a 5 at $500, I don't see $200 of additional costs in the Pro. I think there's probably, making some money on that even. At the same time, we have seen that, as we just pointed out, GPU prices have gone up. I just wonder at this point whether it's just going to push more people towards the PC, simply because, well, you aren't paying the monthly subscription fee. You don't need to pay that at all. If you want free games, you get them from Epic. Cloud saves, everything is there on Steam and actually produced in a better form than I'd say any of the consoles. So right. I am concerned that this is actually going to push people towards towards PCs,
or towards just the regular PS5, or they'll wait for the Switch 2.
Well, there's a lot of people suggesting that the Switch 2 is going to be like $500, which would be
but I mean, getting a decent gaming PC ain't cheap either, right? So
I mean, I have seen some bargain forums with pre-built systems with an i5 and a 4060 for like £500, which I'd say that's actually really, really good value.
It is, but the kind of extra work it takes to get great performance out of that kind of machine, right?
Yeah,
for the 4060, yeah, but
the 4060,
I just feel like coming to that value proposition thing. I think this is just kind of like the second level MacBook. This is like when they give you this choice, and the people who really love PlayStation are going to buy this. That's why Rich is saying it's going to sell out. It will. Like, the people who love PlayStation really, I think they're just going to buy it. But like when you think about like that utility of price, I do think it is entering a different category of consumer electronic at that price level, especially with the EU price level. Yes, you will probably never beat a console currently with the manufacturing stuff going on at its price point for raw performance in a game. But then when you enter this price class category, then you think, well, what if I instead invest the price I would have put into the disk drive into a PC, And then you start getting into a different, I mean, €1,000 PC is actually pretty awesome.
No, I agree. It's
you know
just,
what I
like,
mean? So
PC's still
yeah.
a different thing in terms of like it still sucks in the living room. It is
Well,
usable,
yeah, I
but
mean,
it's not great
but
in the
that's
living
going
room.
to get addressed, isn't it? Sooner rather
That's
or later.
That's what we've been talking about, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
that is exactly what happens.
I mean,
because
if Microsoft doesn't do it, Valve are going to do it. I mean, the work's essentially done, really. The Steam Deck OS would
absolutely.
translate perfectly to a desktop machine.
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah. But I don't think anybody really wants to create that desktop machine. They just want to make PCs work, and you just roll your own, or let ASUS or your friendly
Buy you one.
neighborhood
Yeah.
PC builder make one instead. I think that's
Me.
probably the way forward in that regard. It's going to require a lot of work from PlayStation to keep that audience if the price is just going to continually go up. I mean, I suspect that 10th gen consoles are no problem at all. They'll make it happen. But 11th gen and beyond, I'm really interested to see how they're going to be able to pull that off.